Hey, Colin, can you hear me okay?
I can. How are you?
I'm fine. Are you fine?
Very well, thank you.
Well, am I getting you from Montreal today?
Yeah.
Got it. The Michigan person who moved to Montreal. When did you move out there in the first place?
End of 2007.
Wow. So you preceded the coolness of Montreal, of course.
Yeah, I got in early
Yeah.
before the
Well,
meteoric rise. Yeah.
exactly. Well, we were connected to talk about the menu, which fantastic reviews and all that. But before I get there, I want to compliment you on how fascinating your career is, where sometimes you're the solo artist, sometimes you're the sideman, sometimes you're the composer. It seems like a never-ending amount of great work.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So at
It's
this
very
point
like
in your career, when you're wearing all those hats, was that where you wanted to be, or is it just this happy accident where sometimes you're the creative person, sometimes you're the sideman, etc.?
mm, yeah, I think that it's it's certainly not one or the other. I don't think I forget who I was listening to recently say something to this effect, but it always looks like when we look at we take a snapshot of someone's life later on in their career, like um the questions we ask, how did you, like, what were your decisions to make this happen? And so it wasn't, it certainly wasn't that I thought when I was 21 I'm going to, in a couple decades, make it so that I can do X, Y, and Z. um Nor was it just uh, kind of giving off to inertia throughout the whole of it. So it's the combination of a lot of um, some specific, lots of smaller decisions, some decisions that are a little bit more monumental, a little bit larger in their scope and their effect on the overall, and then a lot of the inertia and just the kind of the natural uh progression and evolution of certain things out in the world. And so
Mhm.
thankfully, making records of my own. So my arc when I was younger, I was always playing solo music throughout my 20s. I always played solo concerts. I didn't really make any records. And I was leading my own bands, and I was playing with a lot of other people's bands, doing a lot of, just gigging, just kind of regular saxophone sideman hustle, not playing, sometimes playing in more like rock band, folk artists, things like that.
Right.
More of the time it was playing more of a jazz informed sort of project, or more soul and R&B, things like that. A lot of more adventurous, exploratory, avant-garde improvisation, and a little bit more skronky focused things. And so I did that through my 20s, and obviously had my collaborations with different singer-songwriters and rock bands, and then so the arc was, all the things were happening at that time. Solo music was happening at that time, but I had not made a real conscious effort to make solo performance and solo recording into the focus. And that really didn't happen until I was about 30, 31,
Mhm.
and decided to pretty much quit everything that I was doing. This is right before I joined Arcade Fire. I quit all the rest of these other bands, and just started to book more solo shows. I recorded a solo record, which was Volume 1, New History of Warfare, Volume 1. And so that certainly was one of those bigger moments, those bigger decisions, which changed the trajectory, because getting out of the game where I was really spreading myself quite thin, playing with a lot of different outfits, and just kind of being a quote unquote gigging musician in New York
Right.
City. getting out of that and putting all of my eggs into mostly the one basket of solo performance and recording felt a little bit intense at the moment, but then ended up being the best thing that I could have done, because the window into film scoring ended up happening as a result of those solo records of volume 1 and volume 2. I think, yeah, I don't even know if volume 2 had come out by that time. But so that first invitation was based on the solo records, and then, you know, and actually several of the first invitations were based on solo records, and so a lot of that early scoring, which I started in maybe 2009, and one here, one there, you know, probably one every year, then 2 every year, and then things kind of blossomed over the course of that decade. But yeah, long story. That was a much longer answer than was necessary, but it's certainly a combination of certain particular decisions and then a lot of just happy happenstance.
Cool. Well, the menu, as I called out earlier, acclaimed real movie. It's one of those things where it's really famous people, but the critics love it at the same time. And you get the proper soundtrack release. It checks a lot of boxes on that end. When you signed on, how much of the movie was actually sculpted? Meaning, did you have video to look at, or did you sign on before there was fully a visual to see for the film?
No, I came in and they were in the middle of the edit. So the first thing I did was read the script. So I read the script without really knowing anything else about the film other than who was in it and who was making it. And I loved the script.
Right.
And so then the next step was just to meet with Mark. And then after that went great, then the next step was watching footage, and by the time I was watching footage, I already had quite a bit written, and was starting to develop the actual I'd written things, but I was actually starting to track them and flesh them out, because I pretty much, based on the script, had a pretty clear concept of what this thing sounded like. And then in seeing the footage, it didn't really do much but enhance that, and so yeah, it was that it wasn't, I would say it wasn't, I didn't come in super early, nor did I come in super late in the process. It was right there in the middle, not too far into the edit, so that there was still enough of flex happening in the edit, and so that no one had become too adherent to any temp music, which was very good. It's always good for my job if there's not a kind of inordinate temp love going on that you have to break through, because I don't. Yeah,
that makes sense. The temp music where the people know what they want it to sound like, even though the new stuff hasn't been written, and there's the question of, am I covering or am I doing an original? Thankfully, you did not have to deal with that element of it. Now, when it comes to composing, are you the sort of composer that hears it in the head and then plays, or do you actually sit down and noodle and go, okay, I think this is it? Or is it project to project?
Not so much project to project, but it is a bit of both of those things. I probably, it's a hear it in the head, know what it sounds like, what it looks like, and then there's like, so with something like the menu, there's I'm always trying to figure out what the backbone is. What's the thing that ties everything together for a score? Because ultimately what I'm after is something that's that's coherent, that has enough elements within it to be a proper world build, so that it really does the whole of the picture is manifest musically, but not so much so that it becomes unruly or kind of Frankenstein-y. So it's just something that you were just kind of reacting from scene to scene, like, okay, well, this one should be the kind of like this vibe, or this, and I'm not. That's definitely not the approach. So it's finding that backbone. Once that backbone is discovered, there's usually 3 pillars around that kind of that revolve and make up the whole of it. And there'll be disparate elements here and there, but mostly that'll do it. And so with the menu, when you read the script, I was thinking, okay, so it's pizzicato strings, it's a very rhythmic, plucky sort of bubbling, sort of driving feeling. There's a moment, particularly, there's a particular moment that happens wherein we can change up abruptly in a lot of different sounds, introduce certain things, but those the plucked strings can become, not entirely, but can become, the source can be piano now. They can become much more metallic and abrasive and aggressive. And so, but that kind of polyrhythmic, mathy, pizzicato, plucky thing can happen throughout. That's the backbone. Then the pillars are, you have a kind of undulous, aqueous saxophone ensemble doing this arpeggiatic thing that is mostly representing the kind of dreamy chef world of the profundity of the art and of the concept of the night. That thing, the choral element, which happens mostly at the back half of the film, but is kind of present throughout. But there is a strong choir element. And then the third being the thing that it's kind of the wild card, but it's mostly that, like the teeth and claws of this particular score, which are sounds that come from a combination of like extended technique saxophone, my voice, some pretty aggressively and grossly played stringed instruments. That me playing stringed instruments usually ends up sounding particularly aggressive and gross, and so that being that other, like the sinister element of things when it gets to be front and center. So it's just that's pretty much the makeup for it, with the beginning being front loaded with a little bit more posh, maybe a stereotypical strings forward, even though it's mostly a veneer. But I figured, and you can read it on the script, the beginning up until the mess, the beginning of the movie is really, there's an introduction, which is an invitation. Like everybody needs to willingly walk through that door, and so everything has to be just promising riches. And then there's certain, as soon as we get to the island, there are certain little winks, little nods, but nothing overt, and no huge hat tipping, just a little bit. And then when the mess happens, it's neither a wink, nod, or a hat tip. It's like it's just opening the doors, and things get to change extremely and instantly. And so that was one of those things about, with this script, I could kind of see everything more or less clearly there. And so it was, a lot of it was, I know what this is going to be, I know what that's going to be, I can, and then it's just implementing it. So then when I get on a piano and I'm kind of coming up with a thing, yes, there are those lines that are just already here, and you just play them. There are those lines that happen because you know the kind of thing you want, and you start playing and going, more of that, more of that, more of that, more of that, and then eureka. So, but for me, it is it always comes to playing it. It always comes to putting it into my hands. I need that, be it if I'm bringing it together on saxophone, clarinets. If I'm writing strings, I'm usually writing them on piano or with my voice, or on keyboard with a MIDI sound. I'm using a particular sound so I can get more into the feel of something, even though ultimately it'll be replaced. The parts will be replaced by real strings. I want to have the feeling of just energetically the feeling of that string sound while I'm playing it initially, so that I can get to where it is I want to go. But yeah, the tactile thing is very important to me.
Got it. Well, two quick questions, and then you are a free man for me. And the first one is, this movie made a lot of headlines, not just because of the great reviews in the cast, but when John Leguizamo had said in an interview that his character was based on Steven Seagal, his experience of working with Seagal, a lot of people picked up on that and laughed. Was that something that you knew about before John said that in an interview?
No, I wouldn't. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that until now. I think it's funny. I wouldn't have seen that at all. Not that I follow a whole lot of behind the scenes Seagal, but I everybody's performance in this piece, the thing, this is in the script, and it also is in the execution of the film. It feels a lot like a theater piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the acting in it, the performances are those of just an absolute stellar, all killer theater piece.
Mm-hmm.
some it's just heavy hitting. And so John, I scored the thing, so I see every scene hundreds of times, and there are lines that he does that I still will laugh at, because they're so perfectly delivered, and so much of it is so much in his. He's able to completely inhabit that character in such a way so that it just becomes seamless. You completely. I mean, like, this is what good actors do, that you forget the actor and you're just there with the character. And so I wouldn't have thought it was Seagal, but however he got there, I mean, he killed it. Like, it's one of the best things about he's like one of the MVPs.
Yeah, for better or for worse, my YouTube algorithm brings up a lot of Steven Seagal horror stories. So John came up there. And my last question for you is, this is a new movie for us, and therefore a new soundtrack for us. But movies tend to be 2-3 years in the making before they come out. Are you allowed to say what's next and what's coming up for Colin Stetson in the near future?
I can't say what, but I am working on something.
Well, let me rephrase that. Is it the kind of thing that maybe we'll see you on tour with this band, maybe there's a movie or two, maybe there's a solo album, more of this prolific, positively erratic existence?
There's tons. I'm working on a ton of stuff right now. So yes, I just had a solo record called Chimera Volume 1 come out in November, along with the Menu soundtrack that came out in November. Next year, we'll see the release of 2 new solo records at the very least, but there'll definitely be 2 new solo records, along with another film score, at least one, a TV series, and what do I want to say? There are a couple other projects that have been recorded already that will finally see the light of day next year in different releases. So, and that I'm excited about. Certain things that I've been sitting on for a few years, for many years, and So yeah, needless to say, there is a ton of stuff happening. I'm just trying to, it is difficult to sort. I'm not somebody who has a huge, I don't have it's all hands on for me in the studio. So I don't have I don't have an entourage, and I don't have assistants with the music. So
there's no Hans Zimmer existence, you're saying.
Hans touches everything too, but I mean, yeah, no, I don't. If I'm working on a score, I'm not doing a whole hell of a lot else. So, and if I'm working on a solo record, I'm not doing. So it's, to me, if I had my way, sometimes I have to overlap a little bit, but if I had my way, it's just, blinders on, and I'm singularly focused. That's my favorite way to be, just to get into one world and then to shut the door on it and turn into another one. So I try to at least operate in that fashion.
Well, you might be the only person I've ever interviewed who's approved by Tom Waits, LCD Sound System, and Disney Plus. So
I think I got that one locked. Yeah.
So looking forward to whatever is next, whatever form it is. And I really appreciate your time, Colin. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate it, man. It's good to talk to you.
Paltrocast.